prisoner swap between Russia and the US. And I thought, wow, this is exciting because when you're talking about Russia and America, our whole lifetime, right? Practically, it's been the Cold War story. And what's more exciting between these two countries than a prisoner swap or potential spy swap? So basically, I want to know from you because of your past connections. I think you're a good person to talk to. What happened? Who are these people? Why now? A strange moment for me because I'm an American living in Russia, and here people are being traded, as if each country is the bad guy place, But here I
Yeah,
am, an American living in Russia, and it's fine, But it
yeah.
is kind of a surreal moment for me to witness while I'm living here. Kevin was an evil American, and then he saw Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, starring Jimmy Stewart, and he decided to change his heart and move to Russia by pretending to be a blind man. Is that right?
Well, yeah. But at that time, I also saw a change in my heart due to what I saw the United States doing with NATO against Russia. And
Hmm.
having known Russia for a long, long time, decided it was time to even the playing field a little bit.
Who am I,
Everybody
Kevin?
knows Joseph Rose. He is the man about Moscow, recently turned political commentator. What
And
can I
is
say?
it okay with the algorithm if I officially say that I'm doing political commentary, or should I just pretend I'm a fun guy and just sneak in political jabs here and there?
That's up to you. And this is actually the largest swap that's been done in post Soviet history. This deal was orchestrated by Turkey, negotiated between Russia, the US, and the NATO allies, and got significant concessions from both sides. Biden has declared that this was a great diplomatic achievement of his administration and took a dig at Donald Trump, saying, why didn't he get them released when he was president? But this was a turkey deal. If you count the actual people that were exchanged, it's 28, including 2 children.
When I heard this was happening, the first thing I thought was the Biden administration did this because they wanted something good in the news because the debate didn't go well. And then Trump survived, thankfully, his assassination. And then Biden decided to drop out suddenly after those two things happened. I don't think it's a coincidence. And now this.
I think the election has something to do with it. They've got to have something good to push Harris up a bit. I don't
And
know.
so if
Do I
I'm
think?
thinking that, I would assume there's lots of people thinking that, because I think Trump had been saying when he's president again, he's going to get all these people back. And so now Biden suddenly is like, look, got him back.
Yeah,
So
and of course that had nothing to do with Biden, but behind the scenes, it was uh, a lot of negotiators from a lot of sides. The
So is this something that would be negotiated for a really long time, and it's going to happen when it happens, and Biden just got lucky, or is it something where the Biden administration made a phone call and said, you know what, we'll accept this deal that we've been not accepting. Let's do it now.
For this deal, they were actually negotiating for the release of Navalny. So considering he
Huh.
passed away on February 16th, 2024, this has
Hmm.
been going on since first of the year. We basically had 16 people released to the United States and its allies by Russia. And
Okay,
we had 10 people given back to Russia if you don't count the 2 children. The 2
right.
children were actually the children of a couple of the people that were released, and they were being held in Slovenia. So that brings the number given to Russia to 12 if you count everybody, 12 versus 16.
A husband and wife.
Yeah, one pair was a husband and wife that were jailed in Slovenia. They had Argentinian passports. They were living in Slovenia and running an IT business and an art studio. And their 2 children were there. They were arrested for being sleeper agents. Now, they weren't arrested until last week. When you start considering everything you hear in the Western press about how Russia trumps up charges, they arrest people just to exchange them for other people, I want everyone to start looking for patterns in what I'm going to talk to you about both sides. and see the similarities in things. These people were arrested a week ago for being sleeper agents, posing as an Argentinian couple. Now, they were dual citizens, and they'd been living in Slovenia for a while. They were arrested. They were brought to court on July 31st, on Tuesday. They
Okay.
were convicted on Tuesday and then ordered deported. And then, of course, on Wednesday, right after that, they're shipped out on a plane back to Russia. Well, to Turkey and then on to Russia, along with their 2 children.
Okay,
So
so weird. But they're part of the swap?
they are
But you're
part of the
saying
swap.
the court ordered them deported. Was that in conjunction with the swap?
Yeah.
So
So
are
the
we just
conviction and the deportation were ordered on the same day.
okay, okay. And these people had you're saying they had 2 different identities?
They had dual citizenship, yeah.
Okay.
Although
Were their
they had
names different?
different names on their Argentinian passports than their Russian passports.
So I mean that would be suspicious, right?
It would be a bit suspicious.
Okay.
It could be.
But it could
I mean,
be nothing. And
you
you're
look at my
saying
Russian passport, my name's different than my US passport, only because of transliteration, but
okay. And so
uh,
you think that one might think that it's possible they were pawns to get
it,
more people traded. Is that what
it's
you're trying to say? Are
possible.
we allowed to say that? Okay.
Yeah, it's possible.
Okay.
Now, it is a little bit suspicious that their names were, one of them totally Argentinian. Munoz is definitely, Gish, Ludwig Gish sounds more German to me.
I heard that their children didn't even know about their ties to Russia, which would also be suspicious if that's true.
Yeah. And I don't know what their children's names were. Obviously, the children had Russian passports or they wouldn't be coming here, or they were
Right.
given diplomatic, pass or something.
Right, right, right. And the video of them coming off the plane is amazing to see. I mean, it made me want to cry. When she sees Putin, the mom, and she starts to cry, and then he
Yep.
gives her
And he's
flowers, which
hugging her. And yeah,
yeah, it's a very sweet moment.
you can always look at all of these people on both sides and say, could they have been doing what they were accused of? Absolutely. Could they be pawns? Absolutely. So you have to kind of weigh all the evidence and see what the patterns are.
Right, right, right. And everyone was on the same plane because they all were flown to Turkey and then flown over, or maybe just a few people in the one video they show.
No, they flew everybody to Antalya. They were swapped and then flown to their respective countries.
Ah, so the trade happened in Turkey.
The
Okay,
trade happened in Turkey too.
okay, got
So
it.
Turkey coordinated the negotiations,
Uh-huh.
the communications, the exchange, the whole works.
Now, why would a smaller country, do something like this? What's in it for Turkey? Are they just sweet people, or is there something else there?
I think Turkey is just trying to play the diplomat in the deal. And, it gives them street cred when it comes to diplomacy.
Yeah, and perhaps it gives them security if they're friendly with 2 of the big powers in the world or 2 of the big countries in the world. I've
Yeah.
heard that Turkey kind of tries to, not in a negative way, but work both sides, to try to, I guess kind of bridge between East and West. If that
Yeah. I like
there
to
we go.
term it, I like to term it that Erdogan tends to sit on the fence, and
Uh-huh.
a guy who sits on the fence eventually is going to have a breeze come along and knock him one way or the other, or down in the middle of the fence straight through his cojones.
Hmm. So you don't feel good about this guy.
I won't say I don't feel good about him, but he does play both sides of the fence,
Okay.
and it's whatever benefits him.
Okay. So who's the next most interesting person on our list here, Kevin? That we should.
Well, according to the United States, the 2 most interesting people, the first would be Evan Gershkovich, um, journalist for the Wall Street Journal. Um, you know, he's the guy that Biden says was targeted by the Russian government because he's a journalist and an American. And
Mhm.
journalism is not a crime.
Uh-huh.
But he was arrested in a town I can't pronounce. The only thing that exists there is a military manufacturing and repair plant where they make tanks. And he was taking pictures outside this plant where it was clearly marked as a top secret plant, and he was arrested for it. Now, people in the United States go, oh, he was just a journalist doing journalism. But think about it. If you or I went to Fort Bragg and we stood outside the fence where it's posted top secret, no entry, and we've got telephoto camera lenses and we're taking pictures of military exercises and equipment rolling out, things like that, what would happen to us? They would
We'd get
arrest us.
arrested. Even as
Yeah.
Americans, we'd get arrested.
Even as Americans, we'd be arrested. So the guy got arrested doing what he shouldn't have been doing. And any way they twist the story, he still was breaking the law.
Yeah, I've heard about him a lot because when Western outlets call me for quotes and they want to put me in articles, they ask me, "Well, this poor guy," and
Yeah.
I don't know the details, so I didn't have a position on it, but it did sound suspicious, because even like one time I was filming and in Russia and military equipment drove in front of the camera, and I
Yeah.
deleted it because I mean you could argue, well, maybe you didn't have to, you weren't trying to film Joe, but my point is to be careful.
I remember sitting on my balcony eating pizza with my wife one night, and I'm making video of the beautiful sunset. And all of a
Mm,
sudden, we see smoke coming from a ship.
okay.
And I realized what we just were watching was the preparation for a launch of Kinjal missiles towards Ukraine. And I videoed the launch.
Oh
That
wow.
video lasted on my camera all of about 3 seconds because
Mm.
I wasn't going to push it.
Who's next most interesting guy or
Oh,
gal?
Paul Whelan,
Oh, I've heard
54
that name, but I don't know anything about this guy, so please fill me in.
54-year-old former US Marine and Michigan Global Security Chief for Borg Warner. He was
Okay.
accused of espionage.
Mhm.
He was arrested in his hotel room in Moscow. He had a USB drive that contained classified information on it. And
Okay.
he claimed that he was a tourist in Russia. He was at a friend's wedding and he was visiting a friend named Ilya Yatsenko who gave him the USB drive. And he thought it was a USB drive of the wedding pictures. But it turned out it was a USB drive full of confidential information. Um, Yatsenko is an artist. So, um, you know, the United States and the West will tell you that Whelan was uh, he was put to hard labor in a Russian work camp.
Okay.
His hard labor was is he was supposed to cut the stray threads off of new prison uniforms that other prisoners were making. And then he got, bumped up in status there and he began sewing buttonholes. So that was his hard
Oh,
labor. Um, and Whalen actually has a pretty sordid background to begin with. He holds 4 passports: Canadian, which is where he was born, US, UK, and Ireland. So you start talking about things that are suspicious. I know people who have 4 or 5 different passports. They all
mhm.
work for intelligence services.
Ah,
I don't
okay.
know anybody who doesn't work for intelligence that has that many passports.
Right.
Um, so he had a dishonorable discharge from the US military. He was a former police officer and sheriff's officer, bad conduct discharges, dereliction of duty, theft, making false statements, false official statements, and wrongfully using other people's social security numbers.
Most of us are not ex-Washington men and ex-evil Americans. So, Kevin, could you describe what might be going on here? I just think about movies and I think, well, this sounds like a guy who was a bad guy and he cut a deal with like spy agencies to try and leverage his life, or what, or is he perhaps just an innocent bystander that was being used as what do you call the mule, like to carry something and he didn't know it? But if that was the case, and Russia, obviously Russia was on him because they picked him up, then they would also be figuring out that who else was involved if he didn't know what he was doing. So help me out here.
Well, he could have just been an idiot or a mule.
Uh-huh.
Um, here, take this USB drive and take it home with you, give it to a friend, show them our pictures. Um, it had nothing to do with recent arrests to get other people released. He was arrested back in December of 2018.
He doesn't even sound like a guy that the U.S. would want back. Sounds like he's a criminal and a liar and a cheater, like someone that you'd want to stay away from.
If you or I were sitting in the United States and somebody gave us confidential information, even if we didn't know it and we carried it to Russia, um, we could very easily, or we're planning to carry it to Russia, we could very easily be arrested in the United States for espionage.
Well, I mean, you have to
You know,
answer these questions when you fly. Did anyone give you anything that you know
exactly.
something? And this is why, right?
Yep.
You can't say, "Oh, it's not mine."
Alsu Kurmasheva, she was a journalist for Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty. She was arrested in Kazan, the capital of Tartarstan, for
Hmm.
failure to register as a foreign agent. And this charge came about because she obtained a US passport while holding a Russian passport. And a lot of Russians don't even know this. If you go to another country and obtain another passport, you come back to Russia, you have to register that foreign passport with the authorities in Russia. Um,
Okay.
my daughter, she had a US pass. She was automatically registered when she got her Russian citizenship because she
Okay.
entered on a US passport.
Okay.
But when she leaves, she has to leave on a Russian passport. When she enters the US, she has to enter on a US passport, leaves the US on a US passport, comes in on a Russian passport. But
Mhm.
she was in Turkey to get on the plane. She's checking in. She gave them her Russian passport. And they said, well, but you have two passports, don't you? So people also need to understand these computers are all connected. US, Russia, Europe, they aren't as standoffish with each other as they claim they are. So that was the first thing she was charged with, was not registering her foreign passport, which made her a foreign agent in Russia. Next guy we had was Vladimir Kara-Murza, 42 years old. He was a dual Russian UK citizen, opposition figure, and journalist. He was
Okay.
also a US green card holder, and he was convicted of false statements against the Russian Federation Army for accusing Russian troops of committing war crimes in Ukraine. And he also was calling for regime change in Moscow. Well, if you call for regime change in Moscow, the last place in the world you want to travel is to Moscow. We then had Kevin Leak, 19 years old, the youngest one detained in Russia. A dual Russian German citizenship, was emailing photos of the special military operation staging grounds on the eve of the operation
Before
to
it
a
started.
foreign state.
Hmm. Wow.
So could have been totally innocent. You know, it's like you say, you happen to be taking, you say, oh, look at all the tanks. You take it and you send it to a friend in another country and say, oh, look what I saw. Oleg Orlov, 71 years old, longtime Soviet and Russian activist. He was arrested for denouncing the conflict in Ukraine and accusing Russia of descending into fascism.
Hmm.
So you can see some patterns in what people get arrested here. And so Westerners know you can criticize the government in Russia and you can criticize the military. What you cannot do is say something that you know is false against the government, a government official, or the military.
Hmm.
Lilia Chanyasheva,
Hmm.
former employee of late opposition activist Alexei Navalny, and
Oh, wow. That's
she was
interesting.
yeah, she was found guilty of creating an extremist community, inciting extremism, and establishing an organization that violated citizens' rights.
And if you've heard of Navalny, but you don't know the details, Kevin and I did a live stream on him. So just go back into our live tabs and you can look that up. And I think we just did a 1 hour live on who is Navalny.
So the next one was related to Lilia, Ksenia Fedeva. She was sentenced for extremism as well. Um, Again, former employee of Navalny, Ilya Yashin, 41 years old, former Moscow councilman, but he was designated as a foreign agent and convicted of spreading false information about the Russian military again. Rico
Interesting.
Krager, age 30, German citizen, sentenced to death in Belarus for
Whoa.
acting on behalf of Ukrainian intelligence services.
Wow.
Belarus, last European country with the death penalty.
Oh, wow.
He,
Okay.
he was found guilty of mercenary activity and acts of terrorism because he detonated an explosive charge on a rail line in Belarus on behalf, they say, of Ukrainian intelligence. Whether it was
Wow.
on behalf of Ukrainian intelligence or not, reality is he did blow up a rail line. So
Okay. So this is a real bad guy.
this is a real bad
Either way you
guy.
cut it. Wow.
Yeah. He was given a pardon on Tuesday to allow his release back to the West on Wednesday. Patrick
Crazy.
Schobel, another German, lots of Germans in this deal. 38 years old. He was a German tourist. This guy is one of those like the basketball player. He was a German tourist, came to Russia to meet a Russian woman that he met online.
Okay.
He was carrying pot containing gummy bears.
Oh my gosh. So this guy's
So
just a goofball. He just was
he's a
stupid.
goofball and got busted for drugs. Yeah. So real hard criminal.
All right. Well, I'm happy for him.
Yeah.
You go home, be more careful.
Yeah. Vadim Astanin, 47-year-old Russian activist. He was head of Navalny's FBK Foundation,
Oh,
and
wow.
they declared the foundation an extremist organization in Russia. He continued
Mhm.
running it, so they arrested him for running an extremist organization. Alexandra Skochelenko, 33-year-old Russian artist and poet. They were replacing the price tags in a grocery store with stickers saying Russia is a fascist state.
Why? Why do people do this to themselves, you know?
My wife often says that people create their own worries and problems.
I mean, it's not that's not gonna do anything, you know? I mean, they're not like being William Wallace here or George Washington. It's just ridiculous, you
Yeah.
know? I mean, even if you think that Russia's the bad guys, which obviously I don't, and you don't, Well, why would someone do that?
Andrei Pivovarov.
Okay.
He ran the organization that's banned in Russia, Open Russia. And this is a US backed organization that calls for regime change in Russia. Dieter Demuri Voronin, he was arrested for paying a Roscosmos employee named Ivan Safronov for classified information about the Russian military in Syria on behalf of
Okay.
German intelligence. He's a German citizen and Russian citizen, and he used a false Georgian name on his Russian passport. So his Russian passport was actually fake. German Moises, who is a dual Russian-German lawyer, and he was helping Russian men avoid the draft in 2022 by helping them get EU residency permits.
Huh. Okay.
So those are the 16 that the West got back. And Erica is asking us, why is the US trading to get folks who aren't US citizens?
Good question.
Probably, yeah, probably because they wanted to look better.
Well, I mean, the U.S. wants to rule the world, right? They are the American empire.
Yeah,
So to me, that's an easy answer. Why are they trading on behalf of other Western countries? They want to be everyone's daddy. It would be my thought. So
and were they really the ones doing the trading, or was it the Turks negotiating for everybody?
right,
You've got a bunch of Germans here,
right.
and maybe Germany was jumping up and down saying, "Hey, if if Russia's getting people back, we want our people back too." So who did Russia get back? Vadim Krasikov,
Okay.
who is an alleged FSB operative. He was arrested in Germany for killing a Chechen separatist who had Georgian citizenship in a Berlin park while he was speeding through the park on his bicycle, which earned him the name the Berlin Bicycle Killer.
Huh.
And I hate to laugh. It's just a funny little story.
Well,
Um,
could it have been an accident, or was he like?
no, he was chasing him and shot him.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. That wasn't an accident.
Suppose allegedly.
Right, right.
So he was arrested for this, but all the evidence that they have came from the German magazine Der Spiegel, the
Okay,
US funded Bellingcat, and
okay.
Russian opposition outlet The Insider. That was the sole evidence against him. Family of the guy that was killed has criticized Germany for letting him go, but
Hmm.
the judge who determined to let him go said that this was a case of freedom in the case of doubt. That was a decisive factor in why he released him. So
Huh.
that tells you how credible the evidence actually
So the
was.
evidence is not super strong.
Yeah,
Interesting.
and the judge is
Even
saying,
though
well,
he has a nickname for being a bicycle killer. Wow.
yeah, but he comes home with a great nickname.
Yeah, interesting. All right.
Yeah,
Don't let him on a what are those scooters called in Russian? The that people are protesting, not protesting. People don't like the scooters in Moscow. The
yeah,
electric scooters everywhere. What are those
yeah.
things called in
Don't give him an
Russian?
electric scooter. Yeah,
I forget the Russian name. I say it all the time.
Vladislav Klushin, 43-year-old Russian businessman, and he was running a $100 million stock market scam in the United States
Oh wow.
involving funds stolen by computer hacking.
Oh wow.
So not the worst criminal in the world, if as far as violence or anything like that, but he
Right.
took a good amount of money. And of course, we already talked about Artem and Anna Doltsev from
Right.
Slovenia. Pavel Rubtsov. Um, he was arrested in Poland, age 42. He's also known as Pablo Gonzalez. And he was doing interviews on the border of Poland and Ukraine about Ukrainian refugees and was arrested by Poland and accused of being a Russian intelligence agent because he had two passports with two different names.
Hmm.
Now, this goes back to the last one we said where they had different names. However, Rubtsov, also known as Pablo Gonzalez, he was born in Russia and his name was Rubtsov, Pavel
Okay.
Rubtsov. In 1991, his mother moved him to Spain and his mother changed his name to Pablo Gonzalez. So this is
Hmm.
why he has a Russian passport with one name and a Spanish passport with another. She legally changed his name.
Huh.
Maybe, she wanted to break ties with a father or whatever, but he was a prominent Spanish journalist who covered Donbass, which would be the most likely reason why he was arrested in Poland.
Hmm.
That would be my thoughts on it.
Got it.
Um, Additional proof they entered against him in court was him receiving payments from the Russian Federation.
Mhm.
However, it was later determined that the money that they were accusing him of receiving in Poland was actually money the Russian Federation was sending his father in Moscow. So
Wow.
he was never formally charged, but he's been held since 2022. Mikhail Mikushin He was arrested in Norway and held on charges of suspicion of spying for Russia. He was
Okay.
actually in Norway on a Brazilian passport using the name Jose Assis Gayamari. So we
Hmm.
have lots of Russians using different names when they're elsewhere.
Okay.
But that was he was a lecturer at a university in Norway, and they
Hmm.
arrested him because he had two passports, basically.
Right.
Vladislav Klushina. He was released from the United States. Businessman arrested in Switzerland and extradited to the United States for securities fraud.
Huh.
He was running a hack to trade scheme that netted, some places are saying 93 million, some 169 million, through securities trades based on them hacking in and getting confidential corporate information from
Hmm.
corporations in the United States. Vadim Konashenko was released from the United States. He was arrested in Estonia on a US warrant and sent back to the United States. He was accused of having ties with the FSB and smuggling illicit munitions to Moscow. Nothing I found out there shows any proof whatsoever was given. And of course, we know those Nordic states are often just playing games like they did with Julian Assange to get them to the United States to convict them for whatever reason.
Right.
So
Right.
I question that one only because of it being Estonia. Yeah.
It's surprising that they don't try to be more friendly with Russia, because
Yeah.
they're so close.
Last one the Russians got back, number 10, Maxim Marchenko. He was imprisoned in the United States. He pled guilty to federal charges of money laundering and smuggling.
Hmm.
He allegedly transported US manufactured military grade microelectronics to end users in Russia. So basically, he was selling computer chips to Russians against sanctions. And
Huh.
he was sentenced on July 17th of 2024 to 3 years in prison. Short trial, short sentencing, just before the release of these prisoners. So
Hmm.
was it really he was selling microchips illegally against sanctions, or was it just more
We need another
political?
guy. Quick, get him.
Yeah, we need another guy. And this is why I say you have to compare what, the West says Russia does about, just grabbing people off the street and arresting them for no reason, and what
Uh-huh.
happens in Western countries. They all
Right.
do it. They all claim that they aren't doing it. They're all guilty.
Mhm, mhm.
And many
Well,
of
I
these
mean,
people
I
are
heard a
innocent.
long time
Yeah.
ago the U.S. has like so many laws in the books that the average person commits 3 felonies a day, and they don't even know about it. And there's a book called 3 Felonies a Day. So what that means is if DC wants you, they can get you for anything, anybody. If all is fair, the 10 people were more valuable than the 16. Correct?
Well, maybe. Depends on whose propaganda you listen to.
Okay.
The West says the people they released were severe criminals.
Okay.
And the people that they got back were all just journalists and tourists and nobody breaking the law. They were targeted by Russia. And as we've already seen with some of them, that's not the case.
Right. Okay.
And I'd say some of the people that Russia got back, some of them are probably bad people. Some probably also had charges that are not great.
Go check out Kevin. There's a bug in my face. Russia has bugs. But yeah, Kevin's an American who lives in Crimea, which is that an island or a peninsula? What would you say? I guess it's a peninsula technically, right?
Technically,
Uh,
it's a peninsula, yeah.
So it's like tropical, subtropical Russia. And he is a very smart guy in a chair who has old connections with American government stuff, you could say, right?
We
So you
could
can
say I
watch
have
it.
connections with various governments stuff.
Right. So you can watch all his episodes and catch up. And he and I have done several lives together, and maybe one day we'll do something in person. I do only some lives. Most of my show is like, comedy, adventure, and some now political analysis stuff with my family and with different guests. I'm an American in Moscow. And my next video is pretty darn cool because I went down to Kevin's part of the world. I did not see Kevin. Don't get too excited. It's not that special. But I actually do a video expose on beaches in Russia, which I didn't even realize existed until I met my Russian wife. So we'll have that
Yeah.
out this weekend sometime.
Tell the truth,
yeah.
you were afraid to cross the bridge.
Actually, my wife planned the whole thing. I just went along for a ride, had a fun time, and I was like, honey, I'll be making videos while we're on family vacation.